Hi, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. So today we're going to be painting Hawaiian Sunset. I'm going to be sipping a little Pinot Grigio, so let's get painting and let's get sipping. So the materials that we're going to be using today is a 16 by 20 stretched primed canvas. You can get this at any of your local craft stores, and you can certainly change up the size, but I'm going to be using a 16 by 20. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes. You're going to need a paper towel for drying your brushes. The three brushes I'm using today is a 1-inch wide bristle brush. I'm using a number 0 round brush, and I'm using a number 8 round brush. I'm going to be using acrylic paints. The colors I'm using today is titanium white, cobalt blue, fluorescent orange, deep yellow, and Mars black. You can certainly change up these colors also if you'd like, but those are the exact colors I'm going to be using, and that's all you're going to need for your supplies today. Alright, so the first step that we're going to be doing is the sky, which is going to take up the majority of your canvas. You're going to be using all of your colors except for black, so you'll use white, blue, fluorescent orange, and yellow. I'm going to start at the top using white and blue. I'm using my bristle brush, my 1-inch bristle brush. I'm going to be going left to right. I like to paint the edges or the sides of my canvas, so you'll see as I go along, I hit those edges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be making my sky lighter as it comes down. So I'm going to be picking up more white and less blue before I even start to go into those sunset colors. Because I really want a nice transition from this blue into the sunset colors. And that happens when you can get that sky to go nice and light before it starts going into the sunset colors. And plus, I don't like to wash my brush. So during a full-on step like this, because I like the colors to blend together, so I don't wash my brush in between. And because I'm not washing my brush in between, I don't want to end up with a green sky, which would happen if I go from blue to yellow. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going blue and white to white, and then I'm going to start using the orange color. I just picked up the orange on my brush, and I'm going to start to introduce that into my sunset. And what's happening here is I'm in essence getting the blue off of my brush, and I'm creating a nice blend for the white into, or the blue into the next color. So now what I'm doing is I'm just kind of moving across the canvas, eliminating a lot of that blue off of my brush right now, and I'm going to start to introduce yellow to it. You can see I'm using a left to right brush stroke. I'm also kind of doing like these long X's, and that way it gives me a nice kind of movement to the sky. I'm going to start to use my yellow now, and you can certainly make this sky lighter or darker or more vibrant. I think I'm going to actually bring some of this orange into the equation on this side as well, just so I can get some really deep sunset colors in here. And because we're using acrylic, one of the best things about it is it's going to dry nice and fast for you. So if you're going along and you feel like you want to go back up into the blue, you can certainly do that because it's going to dry fast. Excuse me. And then you can put an additional layer on top of it if you'd like to. My whole goal here while doing this sunset is I'm going to shoot for a really light spot somewhere around here, which is going to be my sun setting. So as I come down my canvas, I'm continuing to keep in mind that I really want that light spot down there. So as I come into that region, I'm going to attempt to have mostly just white on my brush. So that way it will be a nice, easy transition into the sun area. So right now I'm just kind of getting all of these colors to blend in together. I think I'm going to go a little bit darker up on my sky, the top of my sky in a few minutes, but I just want to kind of work out the majority of the sky initially, and then I'll go back and make any little tweaks that I want. I'm going to be bringing it probably about 3 or 4 inches down to the bottom of my canvas. So at any time you can certainly mark where you want to go. If you feel like your brush is really clean at some point, you can start to put that white spot in for where you want your sun to be, and then you can kind of work those sunset colors around it. I know I want this to be pretty darn vibrant over on the bottom areas close to the close to where it's setting with the land. So I'm going to keep using the deep colors with not much white on my brush, but I still am blending it into where that sun area is going to be. I'm just kind of going left to right with a really gentle touch, so that way I can get it to blend in a little bit, and later I can get that sun to really be super vibrant. But right now, again, I'm just kind of still using my sunset colors, the yellow and the orange and the white. I'm just going to come right about down to this mark. I don't have to worry about any kind of land lines at this point or horizon lines. We're going to be doing that later, so I'm just kind of going across with it at this point. I'm going to go over and get that right hand side now. I'm going to use a combination of the yellow and the orange just to get some real vibrancy over on this side as well. And of course, I'm going to be using my white to soften those colors up a little bit. And again, I'm just kind of going left to right. And once I get the majority of it on here, I can certainly go back and make any little tweaks that I want. Because again, I think I'm going to get it a little bit darker up at the top of my sky just to add some more depth to it. But what I'm doing right now is just kind of finishing up in through here, making sure I have a nice contrast between where I want that sun to be and the rest of the sky. And it doesn't always have to go necessarily straight left to right. You can certainly, if you want to add like a little bit of lightness in here, you can pull that white down and just kind of add some light spots as you go. But again, I think I'm going back up in through here just to add a little bit of darkness. I put orange and blue on my brush at that point, so just in case I had some yellow on my brush, I could certainly counteract it with a little bit of the orange. I just wanted to have a little bit more deepness at the top of this sky. And I'm just kind of finishing up here, making sure it's as deep as I want. These subtle hues of blue coming across the sky also add a nice touch to it, just so it looks really like it's gradually going into that sunset. And again, this is the beautiful thing about acrylic. You can certainly just kind of do touch-ups after it dries. And because this painting is all about the sky, that's why I'm kind of taking my time on the sky, so it really sets a nice tone to the whole painting, and I get the right impact that I'm looking for with this beautiful sunset sky. So I'm just kind of finishing up here. I want to make sure I get a little bit more of these sunset colors here. And as you can see, I'm just going right on top of what I painted before. And because I'm doing that, it's providing a really wonderful effect with the, almost like these rolling clouds going through. I think I'm going to brighten up this center just a little bit more yellow and white. And I'm just going to pull it out into here. And then before I call it that I'm done on the sky, I am going to brighten up my sun one more time before I wash this brush. And only because the sunset is such an important part of this painting do I spend so much time on this sky. Usually I'm kind of quick, let's just do this step and on to the next one, but this painting is really about the sky. So I'm just gonna kind of make sure I get it to my liking here. Make sure I've got enough variation throughout the sky. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of lightly using my brush to blend out any wet spots here. And that will help you to get a more even blend. I'm going to take just a little bit more white and see if I can't get this sunset, the sun actually in through here. Just a smudge lighter. Smudge, I don't even know what that word means, but it sounded good at the time. All right, so I've got nice bright white sun. I want to just kind of lighten up down here. I know that I'm going to want that lightness for the horizon area. And then once you're all done tweaking this sky as much as you want to, we are going to use this brush, the bristle brush, for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. So after you get done with your full tweaking, almost there, you can wash and dry the big brush for the next step, and we'll come right back to it. So the next step that we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting in the ground area. We'll be using our bristle brush, and we're going to be using black paint only. So I'm going to be taking my black paint, and what I do is I'm going to be making myself a horizon line. Now this is land, so it doesn't have to be straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush a little bit along the edge of my sky paint. And again, you can do some high spots or some low spots, but what you want to make sure that you do is that you don't have any vacant canvas between the sky and the land. So you want to make sure that this horizon line really gets all the way up to your sky. And then once you're done with that horizon line, all you need to do is take black paint, and you're going to be painting in this entire area down below, which is going to be the land area. So this is probably one of the easiest steps in the world, because you don't need to use any special brush stroke. You just kind of, you could go left or right, you could go circles. It really makes no difference, because the black paint is going to penetrate and it's going to fill that canvas nicely, and it doesn't matter what brush stroke you use. So just kind of use whatever one you're comfortable with, and you're just going to paint the entire area in. And then once you get done with this step, we are going to be switching brushes to the larger of your small brushes, which in my case, I believe I'm using a number 8 round brush. You'll be putting this big brush in the water cup, and then you can take out the number 8 round brush and dry it on your paper towel, and just get ready for the next step. All right, so for the next step, we're going to be using the number 8 round brush, and we will transition into your smaller round brush also, but we're going to start with this one, with the bigger one, and we're going to be doing the first layer of our trees. So I'm going to be using black paint only, and one of my tricks for this is to have a nice pointy brush, is I take my brush and I actually spin it in my paint on the side of my palette, and that points my brush every time. So when I go to reload my brush, you'll see me spinning it in my paint, and that will reload it. So what I'm going to do for the trunks is I'm going to find a starting spot I'm going to do my big trees, my front trees first, which is why I'm using the bigger brush. I'm going to find my starting point. I'm doing 3. You could certainly do 5 or however many you want. And then as I come down towards my land, I'm going to be pushing my brush a little bit harder, so my trunk gets a little bit wider. So I'm just doing tree trunks right now, and then you can see my tree trunk getting a little bit wider as it comes down, and I'm going to do that for all 3 trees. I'm going to make sure I kind of preserve where my main sunset is here. That way that can be one of the focal points for the painting. So I'm going to start this one right about here, and again I'm just kind of pressing my brush as I go down, and if you have to go back in and just kind of make sure you get enough paint on there, so be it. And then I'm going to do a third one coming over to the right side of my of my sun. And again, I'm starting up here, and as I go down, I'm going to be pushing my brush a little bit harder to get it a little bit wider going down at the base. And then for my palm fronds, we're going to get, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but palm fronds. We're going to be taking a little bit closer of a look. So how I start these is I'm going to be doing almost the stems of each frond, palm frond. It's going to crack me up as I say it every time. So I'm going to just kind of do an assortment of varying lengths for these. Gravity loves to take over on these palm trees, so I'm just kind of doing them at varying lengths in different directions. And then once I get the stem of them, then I've got to do the little, I don't even know what these are called, the offshoots of the palm fronds. I probably should have looked Wikipedia all the anatomy of a palm tree before I started teaching this lesson. But what I'm doing is I'm going directly from the base of each stem, and I, in essence, just pull that paint from the stem. And I know that gravity is going to take over, so as I'm doing it, like on this one, I'm pulling it down. Sometimes I won't even put it on both sides of the stem. Or maybe I just put it on the part that's closer to the ground. Maybe on these ones up here, I'm going to put it on both sides. And you can see as I go along, sometimes I get a little bit faster. I want to make sure my hand stays out of your way here. And I know, again, gravity is going to take over, but it's still, you know, can't defy laws of physics. So if this is going up, those aren't totally going to go 100% down. And then once you have it nice and filled in, I feel like that's pretty good. I'm going to move right on to my next one, so you can get the view of this one as well. And you can see my trees are kind of overlapping one another, which is totally fine. That happens in nature. But you want to make sure that you get them a little bit different looking from one another. And I can see I have a pretty similar branch right there, so I think I'm going to change this up a bit and maybe put one sticking up top, just so I can make sure that each tree looks a little bit different from one another. And again, I'm just kind of working out from that stem point, and I'm going pretty fast. I do reload my brush often, and then that way I make sure I have a good amount of paint on my brush at all times, so it gives a nice fluid motion here. And I'm continuing to just finish these up. I'm gonna go right onto the next tree as soon as I've got these last couple of branches done. And again, I'm gonna start the next one in a similar fashion. I'm going to find my center point, wherever that may be, and I'm just gonna bring all of these branches out. You can have some longer ones, you can come way out if you wanted to. And then once you get those branches on, you're gonna put the little leaves on. And again, go with gravity. I'm going down for a lot of these with a little bit of an arc, so that way they definitely look like they're growing out of the stem or the branch. And again, just kind of bringing this down. I'm going right along the stem there. And then I just got a couple more going on here. And this is nature, so it's meant to be imperfect. They're all meant to look different from one another. If I had them, you know, if it was windy out, maybe they'd all be blowing in one direction. But, you know, you can certainly vary the directions of these. I think I just want to fill that in a little bit more. And then I'm just going to switch brushes right to my small brush to do the little ones down below. So these little ones are meant to look like they're far off in the distance, which is why I'm using the small brush. I'll correct this later. I must have hit it with my palette. But what I'm doing is, again, I'm just going to be doing a whole bunch of little stems or trunks. And you can do them crooked, you can do them straight up. I'm gonna do them in kind of little bushels here. I'm gonna do a couple in through here. Then I'm gonna move down and through where my sunset is. These ones are, I like to do these little tiny ones because to me, these are gonna be the ones that are far, far off in the distance. And again, your brush, if it's, you know, not cooperating with you, if it seems to be a little bit fraying at the end, every time I go into my paint, I'm spinning that paintbrush so I have a nice pointy tip to it. And I'm gonna do a couple over here, and palm trees sometimes tend to lean one way or the other, so you can definitely do some taller ones or some shorter ones. Get them going in different directions. Maybe there's a couple curved ones. And then once you feel like you've got enough on there, then I'm gonna be doing the same process that I did with the top, with the big ones, only this time because they are so far away, you might not have to go full on into the total detail of doing all these little leaves coming off of them. The bigger ones, like in through here, I definitely will, because you can certainly see them. But when you get to those tiny ones off by the sunset, you really don't need to get too crazy with the leaves, simply because you're not going to really be able to discern what is the leaves and what is the branches. So I am just, you know, as I get towards those tinier ones, I may not, you know, go full on into that huge detail that I'm doing on the closer ones. So here I go, and I'm starting to see as they're getting smaller that I just don't need to do all of that detail. So I'm really just kind of focusing on the impression of those branches so they look like they're palm trees, which, oopsie, I just did that again. Hold on, let me get this while it's wet. Oops, maybe not with that. It's easier to kind of get rid of paint if it is in the wet stage. See, you even learn how to correct mistakes when it comes to this. And then I will be able to touch that up a little bit easier later. And let me just kind of make myself a new branch on top of that one. This one's gonna be a little bit bigger of a tree than I thought it was gonna be. There we go. And then I'm gonna continue with my tiny little trees over here. So I find that center point, think of it kind of like a little spider. Find that center point, and then you put all these little legs kind of shooting off of that center point, or a little star or something. But you do want to make sure that you don't have like 5 branches on each tree, which is easy to do when you're cruising along here. You get into a rhythm, and then before you know it, every single tree looks exactly the same because your hand just wants to do the same thing. So what I like to do is try and start your brush at a different point on the branch. Instead of always starting top right, you know, maybe one time you start in the bottom left. Just getting your mindset out of that, that uniform place that it wants to go sometimes, especially when you're trying to cruise along and doing them kind of on a quicker pace here. So again, I've got just a couple more going on here, and my brush is, you know, nice and fluffy at this point, so I can get those little tiny ones without doing any more detail to them. And just a couple more here. Maybe this one is more leaning. Maybe it's got a little bit of weather related leaning action happening. And just this last one here. And then what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to be using this tiny brush, but I will have to wash it and dry it. So after you get all of these ones done as much as you want to, you're going to take this small brush and you're going to wash it and dry it for the next step. All right, so for the next step, I'm going to be using my smallest number 0 brush. I'm going to be doing the highlights on the trees, and I'm going to be using the fluorescent orange and the yellow as my two colors. So the goal here is to get the highlight on the side of the tree that is closest to the sun. So everything on the left side will have highlights primarily on the right side and underneath on the right side of the palm fronds. Everything on the left side on the right side of your canvas will have the highlights on the left side of the trees and the left side of the branches and the leaves and through here. So as I start here, we're going to get a close-up so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to be using my orange paint, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the right side of my tree so you can see what I'm talking about. I am even going outside of the black, so that way that highlight ends up being very prominent. As I come down into the land for these front trees, I'm going to bring that highlight into the ground area. So what'll happen is that tree will naturally just extend down into that ground. And then I'm going to take my orange paint and I'm going to go on the bottom side and maybe on the right side a little bit of some of these branches. As I get towards the top, just think of where that sun is. So I'm going to go over on the right here. I'm going to go over on the right here. I'm going to go kind of right and bottom on this one. And you don't have to do the top left because that's not where the sun is. So I'm going to just, maybe do a little bit over here and a little bit over here. And then that's it. I'm going to call it on that one because I don't need to do the highlights over on the left, but I want to do them on the side of the sun. So we'll pan back out so you can see the next tree, and I'm going to do these front trees first. I'm going to do my highlight down the right side of the tree because the sun is on the right side. I'm going to bring it down into that land so that way it's going to naturally extend this tree. Then I'm going to do the highlights on the bottom right. And again, you're going to bring it past that black so it looks like the edges of it have that highlight along them. And the black will definitely shine through this orange paint, so know that that works. And I'm going to go right on to the next one. And this one, my highlight is going to be on the left side. And I'm using just orange paint for these big ones. The only ones that I'm going to be using the yellow paint for are the ones that are closest to the sun, which will be that center section. Again, I've added my highlights to the left side of these trees just because, or of this one, because that's the side that the sun is on. And I'm just kind of getting some of these bottom ones, left and bottom, because that's where the sun is. And I'm going to just keep reiterating that so that way you don't have any issues as to where it should go here. I'm doing a little bit on the bottom there, maybe a little bit on this left side, and then that's going to be it for that one. And then I'm going to go into my smaller trees. So same thing for these all of these over here. I'm going to go right side. And again, these smaller trees, they're smaller. So you don't really need to concentrate as much on the detail. If you can get it over on that right side, fabulous. If it becomes too difficult just because they're so small, no worries. And I don't bring these trees into the ground. I stop them right at that horizon line. So maybe this looks like they're further off in the distance. And again, I'm just going right side for these trunks. And then as I move towards that center section, I'm going to use yellow paint. But while I have the orange paint on my brush, I'm going to go and hit these ones over on the right side of my canvas, but the left side of the tree. So I'm going to hit these trunks just with a little bit of orange paint. Just almost just outlining that left side of it. And then I'm gonna do a little bit on those branches. Again, left is my primary side that I want to go on. And because these are so small, I don't have to really be concerned about, you know, making sure I get everyone perfect. And then maybe I'll hit another orange one in through here, and another orange one in through here. And I'm gonna switch colors. So I'm gonna just quickly wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna use that yellow color. So when you get in through here, you don't necessarily have to concentrate on left and right because the sun is right behind them. So I'm just gonna put just a little bit of yellow, and because they're so bright from the sun, that's why I'm using the yellow color. Well, I just had a little bit of orange on my brush, but that'll look nice and natural. And then before we go into the final step, I do want to make a correction over here. So for the next step, you just get to watch. I'm going to wash and dry my brush for the next step, but just relax and watch my correction for the next step. Okay, so I mentioned that I was going to make this correction. So this is a tough one because it's black paint on a light color. It will be really difficult to actually erase it or try and put that sky color on top of it. So we're gonna call this, in honor of Mr. Bob Ross, a happy little mistake. What I'm gonna do is I'm using my small brush, I'm using black paint, and I'm gonna have an awesome little tree on the side of my canvas. So I'm just gonna go right down the side of my canvas with some black paint, and I am going to make myself a nice, fun, additional tree. So I'm taking my black paint because the likelihood of you making an error, me included, is pretty good. I mean, they just happen. So a great way to correct them is just incorporate that mistake into your painting. So what I'm doing now is I'm going back and I'm making my little palm fronds, and my mistake is magically disappearing. So I've got a little bit on my side, which is great because I paint over on the side of my canvas anyways. And then I would wait for this to dry a minute, and then I would take my highlight color and I would just come in with my highlight color, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that just yet because it's got to dry. So we're going to sign and date our painting, or just sign our painting as the real last step. And then I would definitely come back and just add a little bit of highlight on this after it dries. So I'm going to wash and dry my small brush in preparation for the final step of any painting. All right, so the final step of any painting is to actually sign it. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. You could certainly sign yours wherever you want. For me, I'm gonna be using my sunset colors, which is gonna be orange and yellow and maybe a touch of white. And I'm gonna sign mine over in the bottom left today. I usually sign mine with my initials. You could date it, you could have fun with this. This is your signature. So you make it your own. And that's going to conclude the Hawaiian sunset. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you love your painting, and I look forward to painting with you again.